This video will show you how to replace the front brake flex hose on a Cadillac CTS. This is part of your front braking system located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Let's get ready to remove our front wheel. To do that, the first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts so we can get the wheel off of here. Now, as far as the bleeder screw, I'm going to be using an 11mm wrench. I also have a collection receptacle. I'm going to open up the bleeder screw with my collection receptacle. After that, I'm going inside of the passenger compartment. I'm going to press the brake pedal all the way to the floor and hold it there with something such as a pry bar. That will force fluid out through the flex hose and caliper. Once it stops, it's going to help prevent any fluid making its way out as we continue on with our repair. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and put my collection receptacle directly on this bleeder screw. My wrench first. Slide that on. Now at this point, I'll open up the bleeder screw, make my way up inside the passenger compartment just as I mentioned. Now that we have full pressure on our brake pedal all the way down to the floor, I'm back out at my wheel well. I'm going to remove my collection receptacle from here and close the bleeder screw. Now I've moved a different collection receptacle underneath where my brake flex hose connects to my caliper. As I start removing my banjo bolt, fluid will come out of this area. Of course, we want to make sure we collect and recycle it as needed. For this banjo bolt, I'll be using an 11mm. A thorough inspection of our banjo bolt, and we'll set that aside. Now, for good measure, to help prevent this flex hose from dangling down where fluid will continue dripping and it could possibly swing, I'm just going to use my banjo bolt and I'm starting it in just a couple threads here. I want to leave it loose. At this point, we're going to follow this flex hose towards the body of the vehicle where it connects to our brake line. So for this metal clip, I'm just using some pliers. You can use a small screwdriver to help pry it out of place. There's our clip. Now typically you should be able to separate the flex hose from the bracket. Mine's stuck in place. Now since I do intend on twisting the flex hose to remove it from my brake line, obviously I have to disconnect the other side of the flex hose from the caliper real quick. You already know how to do that. Just go ahead and remove that banjo bolt so we can twist this. Keep in mind fluid may make its way out of the flex hose or the line. There it is, friend. Now, prior to installing any brand new part, of course, we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. We'll have a quick look at our brake caliper. I'm going to use a clean rag, a quick wipe here. That looks good. Let's make our way inward now. In this area, we want to pay attention where we have our bracket and our brake line fitting. We want to make sure that the brake line and the brake line fitting are still in good usable order, and of course the bracket isn't rotted to the point that it's weak in any way. This does feel good. We've already inspected the small clip that holds the brake hose in place. As we get ready to install our brake flex hose, let's just have a close look at this bracket. Now as I look, I do see that I have a circular port, but looking closely, you can tell that there are 2 small areas which are notched out. One is smaller than the other. If you were looking at your brake flex hose, you're going to find that it has alignment tabs protruding out. Everything needs to fit together perfectly as we continue on with the installation. So let's just look at that flex hose. Down along the bottom area, we have our large tab. As I spin this, I can see my smaller tab area. Let's line this up with our brake line. So I have my brake line slid through my bracket here on the outboard side where I can easily access it with my flex hose. To make things a little easier for me, just as with the removal process, I'm going to be twisting the flex hose to start it onto my fitting. Once I have it so it feels as though it wants to bottom out or it really just can't turn any further, that's where I'm going to start aligning my brake flex hose alignment tabs with the corresponding ports in my bracket. We should be able to twist this as necessary as we align it. Once you feel as though you have it completely bottomed out as far as the base is concerned, continue on with your metal locking clip. Line it up, press it in. The orientation really doesn't matter as long as it's in the proper position. The one point of it that does matter though is just that angled tab that needs to be facing inward towards the brake line, not outward towards the flex hose. So you can have it facing up, down, left, right, whatever's easiest for you. Double check to make sure that's completely secured. Before we go anywhere, let's make sure we tighten our 11mm brake line fitting right here. Okay, right there's bottomed out. I'm just going to take it a tiny bit further. We want to make sure the brake line does not move around inside of the brake line fitting. Otherwise, you might find that you have a brake fluid leak in this area. This is looking good, so now let's make our way along the other side of the flex hose where it connects to our caliper next. Before we get our flex hose in position, let's inspect our banjo bolt. Confirm it's not routed, weak, or damaged, and also that there's no pre-existing gasket, which would typically be located all the way at the flange area. After thoroughly inspecting it, let's continue on with one of our brand new gaskets. Never reuse one of your original gaskets. We'll slide that into position. At this point, we're going to slide it through our flex hose. Once we have it through there, we'll continue on with the other gasket on the opposite side of the flex hose and get this into the caliper. We'll have to make sure we have this in the proper orientation so it lines up. Now, before I tighten this up, let's just have a quick look at my brake flex hose, confirming it's not twisted in a way that might restrict brake fluid flow. Now let's snug and torque that banjo bolt down to 37 foot-pounds. Just double check, make sure there's no movement from your brake flex hose. Now we can do our gravity bleed. The first thing that we have to do is remove the brake pedal depressor. After that, we're going to open up our master cylinder cap and we're making our way to the bleeder screw. All right, so we're at our bleeder screw. Now, as far as the bleeder screw, I'm going to be using an 11mm wrench. We're waiting to complete a gravity bleed. What I mean by that is we're going to allow gravity to draw the fluid from inside of the brake master cylinder down through the entire braking system hydraulics, through the flex hose, through the caliper, and out through this bleeder screw. At first, you're going to see a trickle of fluid with a whole bunch of air bubbles. Eventually, you should see only brake fluid. Okay, at this point, fluid is definitely trickling out of here very well. It's gotten to the point that I don't see any more small air bubbles. This is a good sign. I'll go ahead and close that bleeder screw. Okay, let's just go ahead and clean up any mess real quick. We're going to top off our brake fluid. Okay. Reinstall the cap. The next thing you have to do is make your way up inside the passenger compartment. You're going to pump up the brake pedal. Make sure it feels firm. Assuming it does feel firm, just go ahead and double check to make sure you've cleaned any mess, reinstall the bleeder screw cover, and move along to installing the wheel afterward. If it does feel like it's sinking to the floor, you're going to want to continue on with a manual brake bleed. For this, I like to do all wheels. One last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. With that in place, we'll continue on to all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts. We'll start them on, get the wheel back on the ground, torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. I've got the wheel back on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque these lug nuts to that 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now, since brake fluid is corrosive to your vehicle's paint, let's put a protective barrier in between the master cylinder and the paint on our vehicle. The next thing we have to do is clean around the top of the master cylinder here. We want to make sure that there's no debris that might make its way inside of the braking system. After that, remove your cap. A quick inspection of the cap. If it looks like the seal's damaged, you're going to want to replace that cap and/or the seal. After that, we're going to remove as much fluid from inside of the master cylinder as possible and replace it with clean .3 brake fluid. You can also use .4 as necessary. To do this, you can use a small fluid extractor. Remove as much fluid as possible. Just be careful not to get it on your paint. Once you've removed as much fluid as possible, we have our clean .3, .4 brake fluid here. We'll top it off. We'll reinstall the cover. Now at this point, to start bleeding the brakes, we're going to have to make our way behind each one of the wheels. We're starting at the passenger side rear. Now we're starting our brake bleeding process at the passenger side rear. After I've completed this, we're going to the driver's side front. After completing bleeding 2 brakes, you need to stop at the master cylinder and top it off with some clean .3 or .4 brake fluid. Now I have a helper inside the passenger compartment. They're going to pump up the brake pedal for me. Of course, I have a collection receptacle and my 11mm wrench back here for my bleeder screw. Just get my wrench on there. Okay, go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Now we can see fluid making its way up and through this hose. We need to continue this process till we see only clean brake fluid making its way out with no air bubbles. Okay, you can release, thank you. At this point on my application, I saw that I had only clean brake fluid making its way out with no air bubbles. That's exactly what I need to see. Of course, on your application, you'd want to repeat this process as many times as necessary till you found the same. Once you've completed this caliper, just make sure you clean up any mess. If you had a bleeder screw cover, reinstall that, and we'll move along to the driver's side front. Now let's remove our bleeder screw cover from the bleeder screw. I like to fully remove it. We'll set that aside. I've turned the wheel so we can have a better look at the bleeder screw here. Now I'm going to be using a 10mm for my bleeder screw. I have the person inside the passenger compartment. They're preparing to pump up that brake pedal for me, just as we did before on the other caliper. So of course I need my collection receptacle, 10mm wrench. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. As you can tell, we do have a considerable amount of air coming from this particular brake, so we're going to continue on this process. As for your application, if it looks like it's just clean brake fluid with no air, you should be good to go. Just clean up any mess. Let's continue on. Go ahead and pump, please. I'll just remove my collection receptacle. Make sure that that's nice and tight. And clean any mess. Now I do have a bleeder screw cover, so I'll install that. Now that I've finished bleeding 2 of my brake calipers, we need to make our way to the master cylinder. We're going to top it off to confirm that we do not draw any air inside of our braking system. Once we've topped off that master cylinder, we're going to the driver's side rear. We're going to bleed that caliper, and then I'm going to go to the passenger side front to bleed that caliper. Afterward, I'll be meeting you at that master cylinder for a final top off. All brakes have been bled. Let's remove that cover, top off the brake fluid one last time. Make sure that's nice and tight. We'll clean any mess in this area and we can remove our protective pad.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.